The award was a solid shard of polished gold, and it caught the stage light with a clean, merciless glare. Xavier held it up to the applause, his smile a perfect, practiced curve. Sloan was a wonderful assistant, of course, he said into the microphone, his voice smooth and amplified, so helpful with the early drafts. But the final vision, the breakthrough, that was all me. Some people are meant to inspire, others are meant to execute. Whole auditorium, hundreds of designers and industry titans at the Golden Grid Awards, erupted in cheers. I sat in row 14, the plush velvet of the seat feeling suddenly thin. The single spotlight on Xavier was so bright it bleached all the color from the stage, leaving only his silhouette and that blinding, golden trophy. In the ringing silence of my own head, I made a simple, cold calculation. And that was the last word he would ever get. I met Xavier in a university printmaking studio, a place that smelled of ink and turpentine and ambition. He was the charismatic one, all grand theories and messy sketches. I was the quiet one who knew how to align the screens perfectly, who could mix a Pantone color by eye. We clicked instantly. Our first real collaboration was a poster for a campus film festival, a frantic, 24-hour blur of cheap pizza, shared headphones, and the thrill of creation. We saw it plastered all over campus the next morning, bold and perfect. He threw his arm around me. We did it, Sloan. That was the first time I felt like part of something bigger. The first red flag was smaller, almost invisible. He submitted that same poster to a student design annual and forgot to include my name. It was just an oversight, he'd said, his apology so earnest and charming I felt guilty for even bringing it up. He was the face, I reasoned. I was the hands. It was a partnership. I believed him. After graduation, we launched X and S Collective from a cramped desk in my apartment. The first 2 years were a golden period. We landed the Meridian Group, a luxury hotel chain, as our first major client. I remember the night we got the contract. Xavier bought a bottle of Macallan 18 and we sat on my fire escape, toasting the New York skyline, feeling invincible. He was brilliant in meetings, painting pictures with his words, while I spent the nights translating his abstract ideas into tangible reality. The precise vector curves of the logo, the elegant user flow of the website, the 300-page brand guide. The work was mine, but the story was his. The imbalance grew so slowly I barely noticed. He'd take solo client inspiration trips to Miami or London, while I'd be pulling all-nighters to meet the deadlines he'd so confidently promised. It's the rainmaker, I told myself. I'm the engine. Every partnership has its roles. I was rationalizing my own erasure. The discovery came on a Tuesday. I was searching for a file on our shared studio server when my finger slipped on the trackpad, opening a folder I'd never seen before. XVC Legal. Inside was a single PDF, the incorporation documents for a company called Xavier Vance Creative, registered 6 months prior as a sole proprietorship. My blood went cold. For the next 3 weeks, I began a quiet, meticulous investigation. I used old login credentials to access the backend of our accounting software. I cross-referenced bank statements. I dug through my own archived hard drives, pulling up the original Adobe Illustrator files for the Meridian project, each one embedded with metadata proving I was the sole author and editor, with timestamps from late nights when Xavier was, according to his Instagram, enjoying cocktails on a beach. The numbers were staggering. Of the $150,000 paid by Meridian to our collective, only $25,000 had ever made it to our joint account. The remaining $125,000 had been diverted directly to Xavier Vance Creative. Just as I was about to confront him, he threw me off balance. He came into the studio with an expensive gift, a rare first-edition design monograph I'd wanted for years, and told me he'd submitted our Meridian project to the Golden Grid Awards. For us, he'd said, his eyes shining with sincerity, to finally get the recognition we deserve. He made me feel ashamed for my suspicion. For a moment, I almost let it go. Then, a week later, I saw the finalist announcement online. Lead designer, Xavier Vance. Project assistant, Sloan Porter. That brings us back to the auditorium. As Xavier basked in the applause holding my award, he gave a special magnanimous thank you to Mr. Roth, the CEO of the Meridian Group, for believing in his singular vision from day one. I watched Mr. Roth, a severe man in the front row, nod graciously. It was a perfect, tiny detail. I knew for a fact, from the hundreds of emails I had saved, that Mr. Roth had never corresponded with Xavier after the initial pitch. He had only ever dealt with me, the person executing the vision. And in that moment, the entire plan locked into place, cold and clear and fully formed. The next morning, I hired an intellectual property attorney. Ms. Zimmerman was a woman in her late 60s with brutally sharp eyes and a reputation for dismantling egomaniacs. She didn't work cheap, but after reviewing my evidence for 10 silent minutes, she agreed to take the case on contingency. The process took 4 months. He compiled a fortress of evidence. The time-stamped server logs, the original project files from my personal drive, the bank statements showing the fraudulent wire transfers, and even a screen recording of a Zoom call from 8 months ago, where I patiently taught a confused Xavier how to use a specific vector meshing tool. the very technique central to the award-winning logo. Most damning piece of evidence, a beautiful stroke of ironic luck, was a selfie Xavier had posted from South Beach, margarita in hand, captioned "working hard or hardly working." It was timestamped at 2:17 a.m. on March 14th, the exact minute I was saving the final version of the Meridian logo from my apartment in Brooklyn. One night, while I was back at our old studio late, scanning financial records, I heard his keys in the door. I dove under a drafting table, my heart hammering against my ribs as he walked in, grabbed a book, and left, oblivious. That was the closest he ever came to discovering me. The final move was Ms. Zimmerman's idea. We sent Xavier a formal but deliberately lowball offer to settle a claim of unpaid wages. As predicted, his ego took the bait. He not only rejected it, but, in a fit of arrogant indignation, forwarded our letter to the Meridian Group's entire legal team, attempting to intimidate me by showing them how unstable his former assistant was. He had just personally invited the primary victim of his fraud into the room. The execution was set for a formal video conference mediation. On the screen were 9 faces in a neat grid. Me, Ms. Zimmerman, Xavier, his flustered-looking lawyer, and to his visible surprise, 5 people from Meridian, including their general counsel and Mr. Roth himself. "Xavier," Ms. Zimmerman began, her voice placid, "I just want to understand the creative process better." He launched into a self-aggrandizing monologue about his holistic approach and synergistic vision. He was confident, charming. Then Ms. Zimmerman politely interrupted. "You open the file logo Final V3, AI, and walk Mr. Roth through the stacked filter effects on layer 17? Xavier's smile faltered. Of course." He fumbled for a moment, clicking uselessly. His bravado evaporated, replaced first by confusion, then a rising tide of panic. Ms. Zimmerman shared her screen. First, she displayed the email chain between myself and Mr. Roth, where he specifically praised my meticulous work on the logo. Mr. Roth's expression on the video call turned to stone. Then came the server logs, the metadata, the bank statements. Xavier began to stammer about a misunderstanding, a collaborative spirit. For the final blow, Ms. Zimmerman played the Zoom recording. The entire call watched in silence as my voice patiently guided a clueless Xavier through his own supposed masterpiece. Ended the presentation with a final image, his smiling Miami selfie side by side with the file's creation timestamp in New York, a digital receipt for his lie. Mr. Roth unmuted himself. His voice was quiet, lethal. "This meeting is over. Our legal department will be in touch regarding the fraudulent billing and breach of contract." Xavier's face was ashen. He stared at me through the screen, his eyes wide with a desperate, pleading horror. I just looked back at him and said, "You were right, Xavier." People execute. The fallout was immediate and absolute. Within 24 hours, the story was all over the design blogs. The Golden Grid Committee publicly rescinded the award, citing a violation of their ethics clause. Meridian's lawsuit was swift and brutal. The court ordered him to repay the full $125,000, plus another $60,000 in damages and legal fees. He had to sell his loft to cover the judgment. I saw him once, about a year later. He was working behind the counter at a cheap quick-print shop, the kind of place we used to mock, his shoulders hunched as he explained paper weights to an impatient customer. He looked gray. I started my own firm, Porter Design. Mr. Roth, as it turned out, was my first client. Today, my studio overlooks a quiet street, and the morning light fills the whole space. There's a calm I've never known before, a peace that comes not from victory, but from balance restored. Last month, I gave a lecture at my old university. A student in the front row asked me how I defined a truly great creative partner. I thought of Xavier, of the ink, of the lies. "Some people are meant to inspire, and others are meant to create," I said. "And if you're very lucky, you get to be both." The vision, after all, had always been mine.